Last week, Star Wars Visions debuted on Disney+, so today I'm going to stop and rank all 9 short films from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies, TV, and short films way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 9 segments of Star Wars Visions. My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. If you didn't see my spoiler-free review on it, you can check it out right up here. I think that's where I'll put it, and let's get started. Coming in last place is Tatooine Rhapsody, the one about a band that features baby Boba Fett, and this one just did not connect with me at all. At its core, it's a story about literally a pop punk band or something like that, and somehow maybe there's like a Jedi person that ties into it, bounty hunters tie into it, and then they sing a song to try and win over Jabba the Hutt and the audience. They win over the audience, therefore they win over Jabba, and they survive because of it. There's familiar characters, there's familiar settings, but tonally, story-wise, it's just so far removed from what I like about Star Wars that I just, if I was given the freedom to tell Star Wars story, this is absolutely not in the ballpark of what I would explore. And I even take kind of issue with the nature of the song, where when you listen to the music typically in Jabba's palace or other places in Star Wars, it feels otherworldly, whereas this just feels like anything that would be on, Disney Channel pop punk or whatever. It's this type of stuff, and so I had issue with that. Now, I watched most of these with my whole family. My daughter, this was her favorite one, so my 7-year-old loved this one. It was my least favorite of the bunch. Number 8, 2B1. Now, on a story level, this one is much closer to the realm of Star Wars with what takes place in regards to Jedi, Sith, Inquisitor, droids, but it is super duper kiddie. And I'm not super knowledgeable when it comes to Japanese anime. So I just watched this and it reminded me of Superbook, the old Bible cartoon from when I was growing up, and I believe there was a revival at some point in time in the last 10 or 15 years. And so it just felt like this kiddie cartoon with this plot about a droid and wanting to be a Jedi and then looking for kyber crystals and being buried for those. Just kind of a weird plot, just a little bit too kiddie for me, and the animation style just didn't connect with me. So some ideas were kind of interesting, but overall didn't win me over. Next up, Akakiri. I'm almost positive I mispronounced that. I watched the episode over a week ago, and so I forgot the exact pronunciation. I do apologize on that. I don't know, for me, this one, it just felt awfully thin. This idea of a Jedi plagued by visions returns to his village to protect his love and battle this force-yielding shogun of sorts, and then have a twist ending at the end that he gives into the dark side or something and to bring her back. And I don't know, maybe it's because it was the last episode, and so I'd watched all the previous ones, and there's just enough similarities to some previous ones. I just felt like it was a little bit too short, that it needed to set up the characters and their relations up a little bit more for me to care about the death, the sacrifice, and the turning to evil, for me to care about any of that. Maybe it was just I'd seen a few too many that had kind of these duels in them, but I didn't feel like it ended with a bang. Number 6, The Village Bride. Now, this is another one that used an animation style with like limited motion in the way that it kind of animated the characters when they weren't in action. It's just kind of interesting looking, a little bit more philosophical in nature and the exploration of this village and their customs. And it pays off nicely in the final moments when you have all the reveals of who's whatsy and how it plays out with which character saves the day and how that exactly happens. Just in general, I didn't feel like I connected with the first parts of it as much. Like, it was interesting ideas. It just wasn't necessarily one that worked as well for me. However, my wife said this was her favorite episode. And I think that's one of the things that was kind of neat about Star Wars Visions, watching it with my kids and my wife, and then discussing each episode after it happened and doing our own little ranking as we went along, that each of us resonated with different stories and connected with different ones in different ways. And I thought that was kind of neat that I watched this one. I was like, okay. You know, I like the ideas, but it's kind of boring for me. And my wife immediately went, that was my favorite one. That's pretty cool. In fifth place, The Twins. Now, this one was interesting because it was so boldly over the top and weird that I kind of got a kick out of it while being annoyed by its internal logic at the same time. Now, my understanding is this one takes place shortly after the events of Rise of Skywalker, and essentially have these twins that are one kind of final dark side experiment left out there trying to finish Palpatine's plan. And it leads to these twins ending up on opposite sides of the Force and having their own little duel that leads to some just wild, crazy moments of a guy trying to fly off in his spaceship, and his sister uses the Force to pull him out of the spaceship while he's flying off, which is a cool moment, but then it leads to them battling in space for the remainder of the episode that I'm sure there was some reason that the episode gave as to why they're able to do this. It's just so bonkers and weird that I don't know how possibly this fits into the internal logic of Star Wars. And I think that's somewhat why the producer said, yeah, this stuff isn't canon. These are just fun thought experiments and alternate take stories. And when you take it as that, there is a good bit of fun to be had with these. And that's what I had with this one. This one was, I think, the one for me the most where I was like, all right, if I don't try and fit this into the Star Wars canon and just go with it, it's so bonkers, it's a little bit of fun. In fourth place, Lop and Ocho, another name that I'm probably mispronouncing pretty horribly. And to me, this is the episode that I think had the richest story and family dynamics and mythology to it, but that was hampered by the runtime, because in its setup of this adopted daughter and the imperial rule of this community and the father's refusal to give in to imperial rule and the biological daughter feeling that for the family to move on, they have to embrace the empire, and the father holding back, and the adopted daughter wanting to go by the father's desire and receiving the family sword, and this duel plays out. That's an awful lot to cram into 20 minutes. That's a lot of backstory, character dynamics to care about. And it does a pretty good job of telling this robust story with a bunch of intricate nuance to it in only 20 minutes. But at the same time, that is a lot to squeeze into 20 minutes. And I think it hurt it a little bit because it was just too robust of a story for this specific format while having a compelling story at its center. In third place, The Duel. The first episode of Star Wars Visions was absolutely one of the best. And what's cool about this one is that Star Wars, of course, was heavily influenced by Akira Kurosawa's samurai films. Pretty overtly, segments from The Hidden Fortress are in the original Star Wars film, but all across Star Wars was influenced from samurai culture, and this segment makes that more literal, and it tells an overt samurai story in the world of Star Wars, where you have this village being raided by the Imperial forces and Sith powers, and this outsider steps in to save the day, and you think he's going to be a Jedi, and it turns out that's not exactly what's going on here. And it's designed even to look, it has the film grain and the black and white of 50s Akira Kurosawa samurai films, with just the color for the lights and the sabers. So it's very cool aesthetic with what they did with it. Simple samurai story that fits the length that it had nicely, and kind of develops even the Jedi mythology and the Sith mythology and these Force users, which just add some nuance to it. It's not so simple as if you got a red saber, you're bad, and if you got a blue saber, you're good. Add some complexities to it with what this Ronin character does, and even kind of collecting kyber crystals, nice little details that I just really enjoy. Our runner-up, The Elder, a story about a Jedi Master and his Padawan set before the events of Episode 1. And I think that's why it resonated so well with me, is that it was a lot more familiar than a bunch of these stories, that it used that dynamic that we saw in Episode 1, except with obviously a different pairing of characters off on this quest at a point in time when people haven't seen the Sith for a very long time. And so you just have the Jedi-isms, you have that discovery of this threat, and even the teaching that goes along throughout it, and the musings of the master as he's like, well, I was able to defeat him because time was his enemy. Had I faced him earlier, he probably would have defeated me, but with time, his powers faded. And it was just felt very Star Warsy in a more familiar way. And I think that just made it much more palatable and accessible for me, while just being a cool little short film with a great little duel in it. And so because it was very Star Warsy, made it one of the better ones for me. But coming in first place, the Ninth Jedi. Now, to me, this was a great example of what you could do with this format. And by kind of like stating, this isn't really canon, we're exploring the Star Wars universe. It's Star Wars officially released, essentially fan fiction. This was an interesting, cool story to tell, set hundreds of years after the Skywalker saga, and in this world where the Jedi nor the Sith are exactly in power, and kyber crystals are in short supply, and it's just this different world. It's the Star Wars world we're familiar with, but the dynamics are dramatically different from what we're familiar with and what we know. And that was just a cool place to leave these characters. And I just thought that it was a really interesting direction to go with all of this. And just as a story in and of itself, it sets up the original setup about these Jedi coming together to get these lightsabers that are now in short supply, and these other characters. And then there's just enough paranoia and lack of trust in that you know something's not quite right, but you don't know in what direction that's going. And then all throughout the episode, you have a set of twists, turns, reveals, sacrifices, rescues, and then in true Star Wars fashion, that the daughter is revealed to be the Ninth Jedi as a true Force user. And though she views herself as weak in the Force, that doesn't mean that she won't grow stronger. It's just very hero's journey light, because it's a short film, so there's not a lot you could do in there. And I just thought it's an interesting, unique Star Wars story to be able to tell with a compelling journey, with the mythology, with the character arcs, all of it. So for me, this one pretty distinctly was my favorite of the bunch, so it comes in at number 1. Be sure to share your ranking down below in the comments section. If you wanted more Star Wars content from me, check it out over there in that playlist. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.